Disclaimer. None of the songs, including intro, artworks, including thumbnail, or characters in the video are mine. This is not an accurate portrayal of the characters. This is not a defamation of character either. This is only for entertainment. Warning. Foul language, grammatical mistakes, typographical errors. When Midorima saw a figure pass him and started to run across the street when there were no pedestrian lanes, he clicked his tongue. He figured it was just a dumb person who has no respect for rules. When he heard the loud unending sound of a horn, he turned around just in time to see a person on the middle of the road, frozen. He immediately ran forward and pulled the person away, feeling tremors from his body. He took a quick examination of the person's state before his temper got a hold of him. Are you insane? What do you think you, Atsumu-san? Midorima stopped in shock at the sight of the sobbing, near hyperventilating blonde in his arms. He almost couldn't believe this was the same man who was laughing with him just an hour ago. He can't believe this person in front of him, who looks so broken, was the person who made his past few days complete with his smiles and laugh and quick remarks. Atsumu-san, he whispered, as he gently cradled Atsumu's body closer to him. I'm sorry. He felt Atsumu's body go slack as he passed out. He immediately picked Atsumu up and ran as fast as he can to his apartment without injuring the body he was holding. He entered his home and walked straight to his bedroom, laying Atsumu on his bed. He doesn't have a guest bedroom as he doesn't want and never intended to have visitors. He looked at Atsumu's tear-stained face and tried to wipe it away only to realize that he couldn't because even in his sleep, Atsumu's still crying. He sat beside him and caressed his hair, trying to relax him into a peaceful sleep. That's when he realized the state of Atsumu's body. He has no coat, no scarf, and no shoes. He was running from God knows where for God knows how long in only his pants, shirt and a thin sweater, and barefoot on winter. Midorima cursed as he stood up and paced back and forth in anger. What the fuck happened? It's only been an hour since we last saw each other. What the fuck? He threw a comforter on Atsumu's body when he noticed him shivering. He sat back down on the bed and took hold of Atsumu's feet, wincing slightly when he felt how cold it was. He massaged it as gently as possible, trying to warm it up. He clenched his teeth when he noticed the blisters on his feet, frustrated at not knowing what happened. As he further examined the blonde, he noticed how red his face was, probably due to the crying and the cold weather. He also noticed how red his hands were. Midorima cursed, realizing and imagining how Atsumu might have slipped a few times when he ran barefoot. He stood up and hurriedly went to get his electric heated blanket and threw it over Atsumu. He stood up, ran a hand through his hair and sighed in frustration. What am I going to do? Sighing once more, he marched to his bathroom to take a bath, hoping to clear his head. After he got out of the shower and changed, he checked on Atsumu and seeing him still asleep, he put a hand to his forehead and just as he predicted, Atsumu was running a little too warm. He brushed a few strands of Atsumu's hair off his face and used his thumb to gently trace the tear stains on his cheeks. Realizing what he's doing, Midorima blushed as he removed his hands from Atsumu's face. He coughed into his hand in embarrassment and stood up, hurrying to the kitchen to prepare Atsumu some food for when he wakes up. He's in the kitchen bringing out things he needed to cook only to stop and stare at the kitchen counter where he laid them all out. I don't know how to cook. Kagami was just taking a walk as he didn't really have anything to do when his attention was caught by the loud distressed cry of a cat. He followed the sound and saw Aikoa on a view deck. He smiled fondly, no use denying to himself that he harbors a crush on the pretty boy. Then his eyebrows furrowed at the distressed sound of Tiger, name of Aikoa's cat. He figured it was just because the kitten was cold, but why is Aikoa-san ignoring him? He walked closer to them and saw Tiger peeking out of Aikoa's bag looking at his owner, crying. Alarm bells started to ring on the back of Kagami's head. Aikoa-san. Kagami whispered in confusion as he walked even closer to Aikoa. Aikoa-san, he said, loud enough for Aikoa to hear, but his call was ignored. It didn't even seem like Aikoa heard it. Kagami could feel his heart beat faster as Aikoa walked closer and closer to the edge with no signs of stopping. He took quick and long strides towards Aikoa, trying to quell his rising panic. Aikoa stopped on the edge and Kagami hastened his steps. He saw Aikoa's body relax as gravity pulled him down and Kagami jumped the remaining distance, hooked his arm on Ikoa's waist and pulled him as far away from the edge as he possibly could and pinned him to the snowy ground, preventing him from moving. He didn't notice that from the moment Ikoa stopped on the edge until the moment he was pinned down. Kagami entered the zone. Ikoa-san. Wow, what are you doing? Because what just happened wasn't an accident. Ikoa clearly walked to the edge. He tried searching for answers in Ikoa's face, but it was just so blank. If Kagami didn't see him move a while ago, he would have thought he was a statue. Ikoa turned his head to the side to look at the cliff and Kagami unconsciously tightened his grip, afraid that if he let up for 1 second, Ikoa would try to jump again, and this time, he wouldn't be fast enough. He choked on a sob because this is wrong. Wrong. Ikoa-san, please. Please don't look like that. Do something, please. You're alive. You're alive. You're alive. Give me a sign that you're alive, please. Kagami studied Ikoa's features once more and couldn't help but drown in despair. This is so wrong. Ikoa should always have a smile on his face. Should always laugh with no worries. Should always have eyes that shine with every emotion he feels. He should not look like a cheap marble imitation that just doesn't capture who he is. He felt a small and gentle hand on his face and he grasped it, entwined it with his own. He pressed a kiss on Ikoa's wrist, trying desperately to feel the beat of his pulse, to feel a proof that he's alive. Ikoa-san, please don't do this. Please. There are people who care about you, okay? Atsumu-san, Kisei, Takao, Kiruka all care about you. I care about you. Even when I just met you, I care about you. Please don't do this. Everything that he was thinking, he was feeling, all jumbled inside of him, and all that came out of his mouth were desperate pleas, desperate reasons to convince Ikoa. He didn't mean to cry. It's not easy for him to cry, but there was just something so wrong in seeing someone so bright and full of life look so dead. Ikoa-san. He begged once more, like a devout Christian desperately begging God for some sign of his existence. Then, he saw Ikoa's face move into something more human and less of a lifeless corpse. He watched as stray tears fall from Ikoa's eyes and his heart broke again. Ikoa just looked so tired. Ikoa closed his eyes and Kagami let him, feeling his breathing even out slowly as he fell asleep. He cupped Ikoa's face and wiped his tears away. Kagami decided then and there that Ikoa would smile again, even if he has to make it happen himself. Ikoa-san, you're going to smile genuinely again one day. You're going to cry tears of joy from laughing so hard. I promise one day, you'll be happy again. Ikoa-san, I'll take care of you. People often say that you can't choose who you fall in love with. Kagami disagrees. You can't force yourself to fall in love with someone you really don't have romantic feelings for. And it's hard to fall out of love for someone you're deeply in love with, but choosing to love someone? That's easy. He's just decided to love Ikoa and he's already falling hard. Midorima answered the door and welcomed his butler inside. Tanaka-san, young master, here's the food you requested. I've also taken the liberty of making enough for 3 people for 3 days since I don't know how the appetite of your companion is. I separated yours and his, as well as every meal, into separate lunch boxes so you'd only have to heat it up in the microwave. Thank you, Tanaka-san. I'm just doing my duty, young master. Oh right. Tanaka pulled a huge book out of seemingly nowhere and handed it to Midorima. This book might help you, young master. It's a cookbook and they have fairly easy recipes, so I believe even you could cook them. Midorima pouted slightly. He would be offended, except he really can't cook. He did ask Tanaka, who is his personal butler, to teach him not only how to cook but also how to do his chores before he left the mansion. He was able to learn all of them except cooking. If you're wondering why he's living on his own when he's got a mansion in Tokyo where he has people working for him, well, his answer would be is that the mansion is too big for him. He has no siblings, so the only one he really interacts with is Tanaka, but since he's a teenager, he also liked his privacy, so he mostly stay in his room and study. If he's not practicing basketball, of course. As for his parents, well, his mother died when he was young and his father is not only a businessman but also a doctor. Don't get him wrong, he doesn't have bitter feelings for his dad. They are actually pretty close, since every time his dad has a day off, he tries to spend it with him. He just wanted to be independent. But of course, that's a problem when he doesn't know how to cook. It's not normally a problem since he can just go out to eat. It's not like he has a shortage of money. It's just a problems now since he wanted to make sure Atsumu has something healthy to eat, especially since he has a fever. He checked the time. 7 p.m. Still have time before dinner. I'll wake Atsumu-san at 9 if he isn't already awake by then. Midorima put the food in the fridge and went to his room. He briefly checked on Atsumu before going to his desk and started studying. He tried to focus on his studies but he can't. His thoughts kept going back to the boy on his bed. His mind keeps on showing him scenarios of what might have caused Atsumu to be like that and it's doing nothing but make him anxious. He stood up suddenly when his brain brought him to the scene of Atsumu standing on the road and Midorima had been too late to pull him away. He took a seat on the side of his bed where he watched Atsumu just breathe, trying to match his with it until the panic rising in his chest subsided. It was probably creepy of him to watch someone sleep but he can't help it. His mind keeps on replaying what could have happened had he been even a second late. Seeing Atsumu just breathe, alive, relaxes him. Midorima nervously reached for Atsumu's hands under the guise of warming them up. But the truth is, he wants to touch Atsumu, needs to touch Atsumu. Otherwise, he'd feel like this is just one vivid imagination that his brain concocted to cope with the fact that he actually had been too late. When Oikawa opened his eyes, Kagami was immediately by his side. Oikawa-san. Oikawa moved his head slowly to look at Kagami. His eyes were glazed over and Kagami flinched back. He swallowed the bile steadily rising in his throat at the sight of blank eyes that belonged more to a corpse than to a living, breathing person. Oikawa blinked and his eyes brightened a bit, not really putting life back to them but enough to show he's now aware of his surroundings. Kagami. Hey Oikawa-san. Kagami swallowed back his frustration. That sounded nothing like the Oikawa that had taken to bothering him the past few days. It wasn't light and teasing but deep and cold. How are you doing? Oikawa blinked slowly again, like he doesn't know why he's being asked that question. Fine. Kagami nodded, not really believing Oikawa. Okay. Are you hungry? It took Oikawa a few seconds to respond. He just shrugged. Kagami clenched his fist at that. He then breathed out to calm himself. No use being angry now. Oikawa needs him. Okay. I cooked us some food. Oikawa nodded slightly then slowly moved to get up. His body was heavy, like he just played 3 games in a row, but there was none of that satisfying ache in his muscles, just exhaustion. Kagami noticed Oikawa struggling so he gently helped him up. Oikawa couldn't even muster the energy to argue. As they were eating, Kagami's attention kept going back to Oikawa who was eating slowly, his body just going through the motions. He didn't eat much to begin with but Kagami's already on his 3rd serving and Oikawa hasn't even eaten half of his first. Kagami wanted to make him eat more but he's afraid of pushing Oikawa. He just seems so fragile right now and that's a word he never thought he'd use to describe Oikawa. Kagami stopped eating on his 5th bowl, his appetite lost. Oikawa noticed and also stopped eating. Kagami saw that his food was just barely half of what he was served. He gritted his teeth, frustrated not at Oikawa but at what might have caused him to act like this. Where's Atsumu-san? Kagami sighed internally and stood up to wash the dishes. Oikawa stood up too. I'll handle the dishes Oikawa-san. You're a guest after all. But you already cooked. Yes but it's only a few plates. I can handle it. Oikawa reluctantly nodded and handed his unfinished food to Kagami. Kagami started washing the dishes, letting his frustrations out at the stains. Oikawa was just standing there. Kagami seriously doesn't know how to react around this Oikawa and he hates it. Oikawa is someone who he remembers very easy to get along with. He's fun and full of life. He demands the attention of the room as he enters it but this one seems to be curling in on himself, trying to find the darkest corner of the room and hide in the shadows. He finished washing and drying the plates so he turned back to Oikawa and studied him a bit more. Not finding the answers he was looking for, Kagami just called Oikawa and they both went out of the kitchen so he could let them into his room where the towels are kept. He handed one to Oikawa and directed him to the bathroom. As Oikawa was taking a bath, Kagami sighed and collapsed on the couch. Sorry Tiger. He didn't notice the cat sleeping there. Tiger glared at Kagami a bit before deciding to sleep on Kagami's leg as payment for disturbing him. Midorima did eventually go back to studying because watching someone sleep is just creepy. He took his foldable table to the bed and studied there rather than stay on his desk. Atsumu's tiny movements as well as his breathing helped him relax and focus on his books. That's why he noticed when Atsumu started to move more and when his breath became labored. He let go of his pen and immediately turned his attention to Atsumu. "Atsumu-san?" he whispered, trying to see if Atsumu's awake. When Atsumu didn't respond, Midorima studied him more intently. That is when he noticed tears peeking at the side of Atsumu's eyes. A nightmare, he realized. Atsumu is having a nightmare. Midorima immediately put his hand in Atsumu's head, caressing it and massaging his scalp while whispering assurances to him. "Shh, I'm here, Atsumu-san. Don't cry. You're not alone. I'm here." He didn't really know what he's doing and why he's doing it. He's never really had to comfort a person before. He could have just woken Atsumu up, but he just looked so tired. So Midorima continued doing that, trying to coax Atsumu into a sweet and gentle sleep. When Atsumu calmed down, so did Midorima. He waited a few minutes to make sure that Atsumu is actually calm before standing up. He went to his closet and took out a dream catcher. He doesn't know what Atsumu's zodiac sign is, so he doesn't know what his lucky item is. Hopefully, the dream catcher would suffice. Midorima brushed a stray hair off from Atsumu's face. "May the things that haunt you in your waking hours leave you be in your dreams. Sweet dreams, Atsumu-san." When Oikawa got out of the bathroom, Kagami blushed at the sight of his hair down and flushed face. He took Tiger from his lap and mumbled a little sorry when the cat woke up. He deposited Tiger to Oikawa's arms, who immediately cradled the kitten gently to his chest. Tiger then started purring, happy to be in his owner's arms. Kagami took a quick bath, anxious to leave Oikawa alone. He feels like if he takes too long, Oikawa would vanish. He got out and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw him playing with Tiger on the couch. He watched the scene on front of him fondly before catching himself and shook his head. "Oikawa-san?" he asked as quietly as he could while being heard, as he didn't want to break the comfortable atmosphere. Their eyes met and the atmosphere turned sour once again when Kagami saw Oikawa's still blank eyes. He took a few calming breaths before asking, "Do you want to go to bed now? You can take Tiger with you." Oikawa blinked and nodded silently, picking up Tiger and walking towards Kagami. Kagami led Oikawa to his room. He doesn't know why. He has a comfortable guest room, but he still wanted Oikawa to sleep in his room. That would mean Kagami would be sleeping in the guest room. "You'll be sleeping here, Oikawa-san. I'll be in the next room." Oikawa entered the room and looked around. "This is your room?" Kagami scratched the back of his head. "Yes. The guest room isn't really ready and I just changed the sheets, so it's better for you to sleep here." Oikawa studied Kagami, which made him shuffle nervously on his feet. "Well, it's getting late, Oikawa-san. You should go to bed. You can just come knock on my room if you need me." Kagami turned around and was about to exit the door when a hand clutched the back of his shirt. "Stay, please." Kagami turned around and looked at Oikawa. "Oikawa-san, I'm cold." The words were whispered blankly, but it resonated with too many emotions for Kagami to identify. "Okay," he said finally, leading Oikawa to the bed. They both laid down and Kagami didn't even feel awkward. He was just concerned on making Oikawa as comfortable as possible. He did however stiffen when Oikawa shuffled closer to him, his face on Kagami's neck. It took a few tense-minute silence before Kagami embraced Oikawa, using his entire body to cover him, to protect him. Oikawa sighed and Kagami shivered as he felt his breath on his neck. "Thank you." Oikawa promptly fell asleep. A few minutes later, when Oikawa was already in a deep sleep, Kagami replied. He pulled Oikawa closer to him by the waist, tucked his head under his chin and pressed a light, almost imperceptible kiss on top of his head. "Anytime, Oikawa-san."